The forest was on fire. Ash rained from the sky like black snow, and smoke curled through the pine trees like a serpent. Amid the chaos, a flash of gold leapt through the underbrush, not fleeing, but leading. A golden retriever puppy, soaked and shivering, was guiding 3 wild bobcats toward the river. No one watching would believe it. But it was real. Before we begin this unforgettable story, would you mind sharing where you're from in the comments? And if stories of love, loyalty, and second chances move, you please give this video a like and consider subscribing. The sky above, Wind River Range, Wyoming, hung heavy with a muted gray shroud, as if the heavens themselves held their breath. Snow fell with the quiet weight of 1,000 whispered secrets, blanketing the rugged terrain in relentless white. Pines stood tall and stoic, their dark green limbs trembling beneath the accumulating snow. It was the kind of night that silenced even the bravest creatures, save for the sharp, whistling wind that swept through the valleys like a warning. Nestled among the trees near the base of a ridge, a small, tan-colored camping tent flapped against the gusts. Inside, the Harlow family, Mark, Claire, and their 2 children had huddled together waiting for the storm to pass. But nature had other plans. A sudden, low rumble began almost imperceptible at first, like the growl of a mountain waking. Then the ridge above shuddered. Ice cracked, snow released. A cascade of white thundered down in a furious avalanche. Screams echoed through the trees as the tent and its occupants were swallowed by the roar. Rusty, the family's 6-week-old golden retriever puppy, had been curled in a makeshift bed beside the fire pit. He was small, even for his age, his fur a soft honey-gold ears, too large for his round face and paws that always seemed to trip over themselves. His eyes, wide and trusting, mirrored the world with wonder. Rusty had only known warmth, human laughter, and the taste of marshmallows sneakily fed to him under the stars. Until now. The force of the snow swept Rusty from the camp like a leaf in a stream. He tumbled down the slope, half-buried, whimpering as branches clawed at his fur. Snow filled his mouth, his nose. Darkness fell not just of night, but of unconsciousness. When Rusty awoke, everything was still. The storm had passed, leaving only silence, and moonlight glinting off the snowdrifts like cold silver. His body ached, his little chest rising and falling in the short, rapid bursts. He was curled at the edge of a shallow cave, a jagged crevice nestled beneath the roots of a fallen tree. His tiny body had been deposited there by chance, or perhaps by something more mysterious. Then a sound. A low growl followed by 2 pairs of eyes reflecting the moonlight. Rusty struggled to rise tail-tucked. Fear was a strange taste in his mouth, bitter and paralyzing. The first creature to step forward was Ash, a large male bobcat with thick gray and brown fur streaked with black. His build was lean but powerful. He moved with the gravity of a general, each step measured. His face bore a long scar from his left eye to his jaw, a reminder of a winter fight long past. Ash was the leader of a small trio, calculating, stoic, and fiercely territorial. He approached Rusty, not with immediate aggression, but with deliberate caution. A second feline appeared beside him, Fern noticeably smaller, her fur lighter with a speckled pattern like autumn leaves. Her green eyes held a kind of melancholy softness. Fern was the heart of the trio, calm and nurturing. She had once raised a litter of kits all lost to a coyote attack seasons ago. Since then, she had grown quiet, but still carried the maternal instinct in her every move. Last came Bramble, the youngest and most temperamental of the 3. His tail flicked sharply, his ears pinned back. Bramble was smaller than Ash, but bristling with energy. His reddish coat and shorter snout gave him a fox-like appearance. Orphaned young Bramble had survived by fighting first and trusting later, if ever. Ash signaled with a low grunt, and the three encircled Rusty, who collapsed into the snow too weak to resist. Bramble hissed, ears twitching, but instead of delivering a death blow, Fern stepped forward and licked Rusty's ear once. The pup whimpered, confused. She lay down beside him, warming his body with her own. Ash watched a moment longer, then nodded. The decision was made. That night, deep in the frost-bitten forest of Wyoming, a pact was formed, unspoken, unnatural, and yet somehow undeniable. The days following the storm settled into a quiet rhythm beneath the frost-bitten canopy of Wind River Range. Snow still blanketed the ground, now hardened into a crusty shell beneath the sun's occasional pale gaze. In the mornings, mist curled low across the forest floor like wandering spirits. The air carried the sharp, clear scent of pine coldstone and the distant musk of elk. Time in the wild did not move by clocks, but by instinct, by the rhythm of the hunt, the stillness of watchfulness, the quiet language of survival. Rusty was not a bobcat. He didn't have curved claws or the slinking elegance of his feline foster family. His paws were broader, built to bounce and bound, not to creep. His golden fur stood out against the mottled brown of the trees. And yet, under Ash's silent mentorship, he learned, slowly. Ash was not a patient teacher, but he was precise. Each lesson began without warning. He would vanish into the brush, and Rusty was expected to follow quietly low to the ground, eyes fixed forward. If the pup stepped on a branch, Ash would flick his tail and vanish again, forcing Rusty to try anew. It was a game of failure, but Rusty didn't give up. He couldn't. His nature was not to quit, but to please. He wanted to belong, even if his body wasn't made for their world. Fern played a different role. She taught him through play-stalking pine cones as if they were prey, practicing pounces into snowdrifts, curling up beside him at night to reassure his trembling frame. Bramble, still suspicious, kept his distance most days, though occasionally he'd flick snow into Rusty's face or suddenly dart at him from the underbrush, testing his reflexes. One afternoon, Ash led the trio and Rusty to a narrow creek cutting through the frozen woods. The water had begun to thaw beneath the midday sun, revealing patches of soft ground and clusters of small rodents darting between roots. Ash crouched silently, his body a sculpture of tension. Rusty mimicked him, head low breath, held eyes wide. A vole appeared, twitching its nose, and in a flash Ash pounced. Rusty flinched at the suddenness, but didn't bark as he might have done weeks ago. Progress. That night, beneath the pale shimmer of a waxing moon, Rusty practiced alone. He stalked a falling leaf, padded through a line of dead branches without snapping one. He slipped and fell, once his weight not suited for narrow limbs, but he didn't whimper. He got up, shook off, and tried again. There was grace in his persistence. Even Bramble, watching from above, gave a quiet grunt of approval before slinking off into the shadows. Meanwhile, just a few miles south, the lives of humans carried on in the ranger station at Granite Hollow. Emily Rivers, 29, stood at the edge of a frozen trail, clipboard in hand, her breath curling into the air like ghosts of old thoughts. She was tall and wiry, with wind-burned cheeks, chestnut brown hair always tied in a taut ponytail, and eyes like cold water, reflective still but deep. Emily had transferred to Wind River after a difficult year. She didn't talk about the fire in the national park in Colorado, or the hikers she hadn't reached in time. Since then, She preferred places like this, quiet, unchanging, where the mountains didn't lie. She moved through the woods like a shadow boots, barely disturbing the snow. Her job wasn't just patrol and protection, it was listening. And lately, the forest had been whispering strange things. I'm telling you, a local trapper had said just days earlier I saw a dog. But it wasn't no regular dog. Thing moved like a cat, climbed a tree like one too. Emily had smiled politely, but the words lingered. Today she examined a set of tracks near Bear Rock Ridge. Feline prints mostly, bobcat perhaps, but there between them another set, larger, rounder, and wrong. She crouched low, brushing away the loose powder with her gloved hand. 4 toes, blunt nails, too big for a fox, not coyote, not wolf, and too clean to be wild. A dog. She stood slowly scanning the trees. Her breath slowed. Whatever it was, it moved with the cats, and not just followed, they moved together. The pattern wasn't chase or predator and prey. It was a trail of kin. Back in the forest, the Bobcat family had grown accustomed to their new member. Rusty no longer flinched at sudden noises. He knew when to freeze, when to leap, when to listen. Of course, he would never be silent. His panting breath, his wagging tail betrayed him. But he was fast and clever in his own way. One morning, Bramble chased a snowshoe hare toward Rusty. The dog, instead of leaping like a cat, lunged low and wide, herding the prey into a corner where Ash could finish it. The kill was clean. Ash said nothing, but that night he shared the best pieces with Rusty. It was the first time. As days passed, something shifted in the woods. Tracks of humans appeared closer, scent trails near the water. Rusty paused, often sniffing the air with confusion. His memories were faint but stirring, the smell of smoke, canvas, the salt of human skin. At night, he dreamed of voices, childish laughter, someone calling his name. "Rusty, come here, boy." But when he woke, all he saw were bobcat eyes reflecting firelight. Still, he did not leave. The forest was home now. For Emily, the mystery deepened. She reviewed her motion-triggered cameras and found nothing until one blurry photo. In it, a shadowy shape. Feline tail, but next to it, unmistakably golden fur. Too tall for a fox, too sleek for a bear cub. She printed the image and pinned it to her map. Something was out there. Something that didn't make sense. She intended to find it. The snow had begun to soften under spring's hesitant fingers. Wind River Range no longer roared with the silence of a frozen tomb. Icicles dripped in rhythm with the sun's rising, and the occasional bird song cut through the trees like the echo of life returning. Beneath this awakening canopy, Rusty moved with a confidence that was no longer borrowed but earned. He could crouch low in the underbrush, hold his breath for minutes without a whine, and follow Ash without stepping on a single twig. Yet there was something in him that refused to fully harden, some pulse beneath the wildness that remained defiantly gentle. That morning, as the first meltwater snaked down the hill and pooled in shallow gullies, Rusty, Ash, Fern, and Bramble prowled the ridgeline. Bramble, as usual, darted ahead, half playful, half vigilant. Ash moved like a ghost, his heavy shoulders rippling with power, while Fern trailed beside Rusty, her eyes scanning for prey, but often returning to Rusty's face, as if watching for something else. Then came the sound, a low bleat, sharp and broken, not the cry of a predator, a cry of pain. The bobcats froze. Rusty sniffed the air and darted toward the sound ear's forward paws, silent. He crested a slope and skidded to a halt. There, in the hollow below, a small fawn lay tangled in wire, an illegal snare likely, left by poachers before the storm. Its leg was cinched, cruelly, blood seeping into the snow. Its eyes rolled wild and terrified, its mouth opening in helpless gasps. Ash arrived a moment later. He stared down at the creature with cold neutrality. Food. Easy, defenseless, weak. He inched forward, body low. But Rusty stepped in front of him. He didn't growl. He didn't bark. He simply stood chest-puffed, legs trembling, blocking the kill. Ash's ears flicked back. A warning growl rippled through his chest. Fern called softly, but didn't move forward. Rusty turned his amber eyes, meeting Ash's. They didn't challenge. They pleaded. Ash took another step. Rusty barked. It was sharp, short. A sound he hadn't made in weeks. The forest stilled. Even bramble froze, ears twitching. Ash hissed through his teeth and backed away, not in defeat but in disbelief. Rusty turned and gently nosed the fawn's side. The creature flinched but didn't fight. Its breath came in shallow puffs. Rusty sniffed the snare, then clumsy with paws too blunt to untie, began gnawing at the wire. It took nearly an hour. Ash sat apart, tail flicking in irritation. Fern crept closer, watching. When the wire finally snapped, the fawn kicked weakly and stood on 3 legs, eyes wide. Rusty stepped back. The fawn limped into the trees, vanishing into the green shadow. Ash didn't speak. He simply turned and walked away. Fern approached Rusty and licked his forehead once. Bramble snorted from a distance but didn't protest. That night, Rusty didn't sleep easily. He dreamt. The forest faded into the scent of campfire and canvas. He heard voices, a girl's laugh, a woman singing softly. His name, Rusty, called into the dusk. The sound made his chest ache. In the dream he ran toward the voice but never reached it. He woke with a whimper. Across the trees, Emily Rivers stared at her notebook. She had spent the last 4 days tracking the strange mixed prints. Dog and bobcat. But it wasn't just that. The movement wasn't random. It followed a pattern, circles along the edge of the forest, cautious, smart. Too smart for a lost dog. This morning she'd found something, new claw marks on a low tree trunk higher than a bobcat's leap, but too shallow for bear. And near them a tuft of gold fur caught in a thorn bush. Emily held the tuft in her fingers, now back at the ranger station. She stared at it in the light. Dog, she muttered. But not just dog. Her office door creaked open. Kyle Monroe stepped in, a seasoned ranger in his late 40s, with a round face, grizzled beard, and deep voice. He was broad-shouldered and wore his uniform like it had grown onto him. Gruff by nature, he rarely spoke unless it mattered. "You still chasing your ghost animal?" he asked, folding his arms. Emily nodded without looking up. "It's not a ghost. It's real. There's something out there that doesn't belong in either world." Kyle snorted. "Mountains got tricks. Could be a wild pup that learned to survive, or something someone abandoned." Emily turned. "Whatever it is, it's not moving like a stray. It's moving like it's learning." Kyle frowned, his gaze settling on the tuft of fur. "You think it's part of a bobcat family, I think." She said slowly, "It might not know what it is anymore." That night, Rusty sat at the edge of the den while the others slept. He stared up at the stars, ears twitching. A wind stirred the pines. Somewhere far off, a coyote howled. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked back over his shoulder to where the fawn had vanished, and then forward toward the dark woods that stretched endlessly beyond. Something tugged at him, a pull he didn't understand. Not hunger, not fear. Something else, belonging, or the lack of it. The sun rose red that morning, low and swollen like a warning. By mid-afternoon, the scent of smoke had replaced the clean, resinous tang of pine in the Wind River Range. Animals were already on the move, small feet and hooves stirring underbrush, fleeing from something not yet seen but deeply felt. Rusty had noticed it hours before the others. His nose twitched, hackles prickling, as the wind carried whispers of burning bark and something more acidic, plastic maybe. Bramble was the first to notice his tension ears turning toward the same distant breeze. Ash soon followed, eyes narrowing, head tilted in the direction of the smoke. And then the first crack echoed through the woods, the sharp, hungry snap of flame-catching dry branch. It was wildfire season earlier than usual. The Bobcat den, nestled between two granite outcrops near the creek's bend, had always been a safe haven. But not today. Today, the wind was blowing west toward them. Ash moved fast, issuing a low growl that sent the group into motion. Bramble darted ahead, scouting. Fern nudged Rusty, her touch urgent. But it was Rusty Ears, high-tail stiff, who bolted not uphill but toward the creek. He barked once. Loud, commanding. The Bobcats paused. Ash hesitated, then followed. The fire came faster than expected. A wall of heat and choking air descended through the trees as Rusty led them down the slope away from the fire line. The creek ahead shimmered like salvation. But the current had swelled meltwater and ash, turning the water swift and cold. Without pause, Rusty plunged in. The golden retriever's strong legs kicked against the current. His thick coat darkened, clinging to lean muscle as he paddled across. Behind him, Fern leapt. Then Bramble. Ash was last watching the fire descend before vanishing into the torrent. On the other side, soaked and shivering, the group collapsed beneath a rocky ledge. Smoke drifted overhead, not yet reaching them. For now, they were safe. But Rusty wasn't there. In the chaos, he had slipped. Swept further downstream, the pup had disappeared into the twisting bend where the creek curved into the dense underbrush. Fern called with soft chirps. Bramble paced. Ash stared at the water with a clenched jaw but said nothing. Downstream, Rusty emerged near a patch of blackened ground, scorched earth, where the fire had already passed. Alone now, the forest unfamiliar, he sniffed the air, confused, trembling. He barked twice, then froze. A voice. Human. Whoa! Hey! Hey, buddy! The voice was female. Calm, but laced with awe. Emily Rivers stepped from behind a fire-blackened pine, her boots crunching softly against the soot-covered soil. She wore her fire patrol gear, charcoal gray pants, an orange vest, a helmet pushed back to reveal her flushed face. Her cheeks were streaked with ash, but her eyes, blue and sharp, locked instantly on the golden shape in front of her. Rusty stared, and in that moment 1,000 smells came rushing back. Soap wool campfire apple slices from a child's hand, a girl's laughter, a man's voice humming. His body sagged slightly, as if something inside him had loosened. Emily crouched slowly, palm extended. "You okay, boy?" She had never seen anything like him. A golden retriever, young, lean, his fur matted in places, yet his eyes were sharp, his movements cautious, controlled. Not like a stray. And there, near his back flank, faint but visible, a scar in the shape of a loop, maybe from a camping harness once worn. She remembered the report. Months ago. A family lost in a snowstorm. One child and a dog never found. Rusty, she whispered. The name hit him like thunder. His ears perked, eyes widened. She stood. "Come on, buddy. Let's get you out of here." But Rusty didn't move. Instead, he turned, looked back into the forest, ears twitching toward something only he could hear. Fern's soft call, Bramble's impatient shuffle, Ash's silence. Behind Emily, smoke thickened. A fresh flare-up lit the sky to the south. She turned quickly, radioing in coordinates. Fire crews would arrive soon, but she couldn't wait. She turned back just in time to see Rusty step closer, touch his nose to her palm, then back away again. "Rusty," she said softly. He stared, torn. He had found something in her voice, a memory. But he had found something else in the wild. A life, a rhythm, a family. Rusty turned and vanished into the trees. Emily watched, heart pounding. The forest bore its wounds quietly. Blackened trees reached skyward like skeletal fingers, and the charred ground gave way in soft crunches beneath every step. Yet spring pushed on with defiance. Fresh green shoots sprouted near burned roots, and the air, though tinged with soot, buzzed again with the flutter of returning life. From the window of the ranger station at Granite Hollow, Emily Rivers watched this slow rebirth with both hope and hesitation. Rusty lay on a large canvas dog bed near the door, his golden fur now brushed clean, though a faint shadow of ash still lingered along his hindquarters. His right ear twitched as Emily shifted behind her desk. The past few days had passed in a blur. She had radioed for backup after the fire, and though Rusty had vanished back into the woods that day, he returned at dawn, muddy, exhausted, but unhurt. He had come willingly. Or maybe he was simply tired of choosing. Emily had cleaned his paws, checked for injuries, and left the door open the whole time. When he didn't run, she shut it gently behind him. Now he was hers, but not wholly. Rusty was a creature carved from two worlds, trained by the forest, shaped by feline grace, but still undeniably a dog at heart. He followed Emily's movements around the station, sat by her feet as she wrote reports. But every evening, as the sun dipped behind the ridgeline, he would wander to the edge of the property, to the great stone outcrop that jutted like a watchtower above the valley. There he sat, nose pointed toward the trees, waiting. On the third day after his return, Emily made a decision. She stood in front of the Regional Wildlife Committee, 6 individuals seated in a half-moon table in a small municipal building just beyond the forest perimeter. Her proposal was clear and calm. She requested the creation of a semi-wild sanctuary zone, a protected but unbounded space for displaced bobcats, especially the trio believed to have formed an unusual bond with Rusty. She included the tracking data motion-sensitive camera footage and her own field reports. At the center of her presentation was one image, Rusty, standing between ash and fern, near the creek, captured in a blurred moment of stillness by a trail cam. In the photo, his head was turned to the side, as if listening for something only the wild could hear. The committee's members included Helen Marsh, a gray-haired woman in her 60s with a sharp chin and a sharper tongue, and Dr. Nolan Graves, a stoic biologist, whose thick glasses magnified his already intense eyes. He was tall with narrow shoulders and a voice as dry as paper, but behind that academic air was genuine curiosity. Graves leaned forward after Emily's pitch. "So, what you're proposing is a containment-free habitat with no enclosure." Emily nodded. A monitored region overlapping natural bobcat territory. No cages, no captivity, just space with human contact only when necessary. Helen scoffed softly. "You're asking us to create a sanctuary for predators that raised a domesticated dog like their own. Sounds more like a folktale." Emily didn't blink. "Then let it be the first one we build on a folktale that turned out to be real. It took 3 weeks for the permit to come through. In that time, Rusty grew stronger, but quieter. He no longer barked. He would play fetch when Emily offered, but his eyes always wandered. Every dusk he returned to his rock, and every dusk he returned alone. The day the fencing posts were laid not to trap, but to mark the boundaries of the sanctuary. Rusty stood with Emily as a handful of volunteers staked flags around the designated area. Among them was Sarah Glenn, a forestry student volunteering for the summer. She was tall and freckled with sunburnt cheeks and a quiet voice. Though new to field work, Sarah had a keen eye and a habit of sketching the animals she spotted. She knelt beside Rusty once during lunch and whispered, "You don't look lost, just waiting." That night, Rusty didn't come back right away. Emily waited porch light left on. It was well after midnight when she heard the crunch of gravel. Rusty emerged from the tree line, his coat streaked with damp. But he wasn't alone. Behind him padded three shapes, silent, deliberate, wild. Ash, fern, bramble. They paused just past the boundary, eyes catching the soft yellow light of the cabin window. Rusty turned once, trotted back to Emily's feet, then returned to the trio. The four sat together in the grass, no words, no commands, just the deep language of presence. They stayed until dawn. From that morning on, the sanctuary was never empty. Sometimes it was only Rusty. Sometimes only Ash. But more often than not, all four figures could be seen from the ranger station window, training, stalking, resting, watching. Rusty slept at Emily's side but hunted with the Bobcats. He learned to patrol fences but returned to the trees. He wore a collar but carried no leash. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with thunder or fire. They come in the shape of a lost puppy, raised by wild hearts, who returns not to where he was born, but to where he was truly loved. Rusty's story reminds us that family is not defined by blood, but by the hands or paws that hold you when the world feels cold. And maybe, just maybe, it was God's quiet hand that guided Rusty through fire, across water, and back to both worlds. In our own lives, we often feel torn between two places, two identities, or two versions of ourselves. But like Rusty, we're never truly lost when love leads the way. If you believe in second chances, in divine guidance, or in the healing power of love, this story is a whisper from heaven itself. If this story touched your heart, please leave a comment below and type Amen to bless every lost soul still searching for home. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this. May God bless you and guide your journey, just as He guided Rusty.